to a special edition of whatever this channel is. I've got my husband Ron with me today because we were having a really interesting discussion. I was a guest speaker. I led a breakout room panel on pursuing your passions today at the Officer Women's Leadership Symposium. And at the symposium, there were women of all ranks and all services, and this was just one of the many topics covered. And I was worried when they asked me if I would do this topic. I was like, of course, I think it's such an important topic, but I was worried that no one would be interested in it. And not only were people interested in it, but we had to actually turn people away because we didn't have space. And I did 2 back-to-back sessions. So the point of this panel is about how to find and pursue your passions and hobbies, and discuss best practices and share your ideas of how to build hobbies and passions into your life. And what we did is very brief. I only had about 25 minutes each time, and I don't even think we'll take that long today. But I wanted Ron to do this with us because he is I like to call him an economist, and he's always like, no, I'm not an economist. So why don't you tell everybody what you are and why I have you on here?
Okay. I am a person with a master's degree in economics, though I am not a practicing economist. And I also have a law degree, though I am not a practicing lawyer. So I guess I'm a dilettante who likes a lot of different things. But for a living, I actually do something in the economic realm. I'm responsible for military retirement policy for the Department of Defense. And there is actually quite a bit of economics kind of rolled into that, though it is a policy job and not specifically an economics job.
So mostly because we were having the discussion about the economics of hobbies and all that, I figured it would be good to have his point of view. But before we go there, I just wanted to do, I have my notes here. The first thing we talked about is what is a hobby. And a hobby is anything you do for pleasure in your leisure time. And one of the things I told them was that hobby is not your side hustle. Because the second that you turn your hobby into a side hustle, that means it's a job and it's no longer a hobby. So you need to find another hobby. I get asked all the time why I don't turn my sewing and before that my costume making into a company or an Etsy shop or anything like that. And it's because the few times I have tried to kind of dip my toe in there, I realize how unhappy it makes me and how it is no longer a hobby for me. It has become work. And I don't want it to be work. I want it to be this thing that gives me a mental break, which takes me to why are hobbies important? They give you stress relief. And so that's number 1. Number 2, the anticipation of the hobby and what you're going to do can also bring you a sense of happiness. For example, I love planning out my upcoming projects that I'm going to sew, figuring out what fabric I'm going to use, the pattern I'm going to use, what I'm going to use it for. That anticipation and planning and what I'm going to do is in some ways more fun than the actual making. In fact, sometimes the making makes me want to beat my head against the wall because I screw things up. And then, though the making is fun too. Number 3, hobbies boost your mental and physical health. So if you're working yourself to death and you're never doing anything for you, you've got nothing to give. It's kind of like the whole flying thing. Put your own oxygen mask on before you put on someone else's. You've got to be taking care of yourself. Hobbies, in my opinion, are a very important form of self-care. And lastly, hobbies improve your relationships with others. So even the most, I think, introverted person out there probably, I mean, I'm not a therapist, but I think even very introverted people, they're humans. You need to have relationships with other people, and hobbies are a way to... Unsurprisingly, my battery died. So what I was saying is it improves relationships and even introverts are human and need relationships with people. And the dogs have found a squeaky toy. Okay. They're gonna run into the tripod. Yep, that just happened. So let's go ahead and pull them into our laps, because now they're playing tug of war under the... Okay. Rosie. Here you go, Sam. All right. And then the third thing we talk about was how to make time for your hobbies. And the important thing is making time. Like, you've got to, Rosie, no. You've got to make time for your hobbies. Like, Sam's hobby is playing with this squeaky toy. No matter how busy you are, you need to find a way to make time for it. And so we talked about the importance of hobbies and all that. And now we're talking about time. And the reason why I wanted Ron on here, and the reason why I'm so opposed to turning my hobby into a side hustle and so opposed to trying to monetize it. Does this mean I never take commissions? No, I do. On occasion. I have a very teeny tiny short list of friends. I have a very teeny tiny short list of friends that I will make commissions for. And that is because I know working with them will be a joy for me, but also because my time has value, and if I were to monetize that, it then becomes a job. So what were you talking about earlier, that the joy and the value in just doing the hobby?
So what I was saying was that ultimately you can't monetize everything, right? Money, so if you think about economics, you probably think about money, and that's fine. That's what most people do. But at the heart of it, economics is about total utility, right? And kind of as a shorthand for total utility, you can kind of think of that, in a sense, as happiness. So what you're really trying to get to is maximizing happiness, and money is certainly part of that. We've all, I think, from psychology, heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and until you've kind of met those base needs, there's not a whole lot else that matters to you. And money is kind of the method through which we meet those needs in the system that we've developed. So that's important. But once you've met those needs, money has diminishing returns, right? So just money, eventually, once you've met your needs, starts to become worth less and less to you. Every additional dollar becomes worth less. And other things start to matter more. And if you monetize things, essentially what you're doing, if you monetize the other things that matter to you, essentially what you're doing is turning them into money, right? Which means that that every additional dollar that you make from those means less and less. And so you've traded other forms of happiness, which at the point at which you're trying to monetize that probably mean more, that happiness means more to you than the money. You've traded that for money, which means less to you at this point. So we really what we need to think about, I think, is our total happiness, and money's a part of that. Money's always going to be a part of that. But then we need to think about how we manage our resources outside of money, and the trade-off between time and money, right? And that's kind of the trade-off that dominates everybody's life. And once you have enough money, how do you spend? Because getting enough money generally means that you have a lot less time. How you spend every additional unit of time really matters.
One of the things that, thank you, because one of the things that one of the women who attended my breakout panel today said that I was the first person who ever told her to not try to turn her hobby into a side hustle, to not try to monetize her hobby. And we talked a lot about that, and I said, let's talk about my sewing. I want to sew the things I want to sew. and maybe I want to get together with a friend to sew her a dress, but we're going to talk about the concept for the dress and the fabric for the dress together. So I'm still going to be invested and excited in the project because I still had a hand in it. If I have a shop and I have 10 people order a gathered skirt from me in, I don't know, SpongeBob SquarePants print, and maybe I don't want to sew SpongeBob SquarePants print. Maybe I want to sew a Star Wars print, but I sold 10 SpongeBob skirts, then I got to crank out 10 SpongeBob skirts. What if I don't want to make a gathered skirt? But that's what's been ordered, so that's what I have to make. And I have to make it on a timeline, and I have to make it when they want it. And, you know, heaven forbid there's anything wrong with it. Whereas if I'm sewing for myself, or if I'm sewing for friends as a commission where we work together on the concept, or if I'm making gifts, I just get the joy out of it. Oh, now we've been joined by a cat. So we got 2 dogs and one cat. There's 2 other animals still running around in this house. To me, trying to turn it into a job just removes all the joy from it, and the whole purpose of what the hobby gives me, whether that hobby is baking, whether that hobby is running. And honestly, this channel being part of that, because this channel is something I started as an extension of my sewing hobby. And do I check and see how many subscribers I have? Of course I do, because I'm curious. And I like learning, and I like learning new skills. But this is not a thing that I am not trying to turn my YouTube channel into a job for me. In fact, one of the reasons I waited so long to start a YouTube channel is because when we started working on the schoolie, everybody said, oh, you need to start a YouTube channel. You guys will become influencers. You'll blow up. And I was like, I don't think I want that. That sounds like a lot of work.
It's work.
Because I know you started to document things and make videos, and it kind of was taking the fun out of working on the bus for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so then you just started working on the work. Now, I am actually, okay, they found the squeaky toy again. I am enjoying doing these videos, and I am enjoying compiling the schoolie videos together. That is fun for me. But when it's not fun for me, I'll stop.
Yeah, and I think that's just the nature of a job versus a hobby, right? Like, I love the work that I do. I'm exactly the kind of nerd who should be doing the job that I'm doing. I love the analysis, I love writing policy, I love all of those things. But the truth of the matter is, it's a job, which means that sometimes I also hate it. Because I have to do...
Or wish you didn't have to do it that day.
Well, and it's not just that I don't wish I wish I didn't have to do it that day. There are things that I have to do that I wish I didn't have to do. If I could just do the parts of my job that I want to do, and do them when I wanted to do them, and not have to do all of the rest of it, then it wouldn't be a job anymore, and probably nobody would want to pay me for it.
Yeah, and it would be a hobby at that point.
It would be a hobby, exactly.
Well, it's like with flying. I mean, I love to fly, but I didn't like doing all the pre-mission planning. So much work. And it was work, but the flying was the reward. So one of the questions I got asked was, how did I balance not becoming completely obsessed and overtaken by my hobbies to the, forgetting to the expense of everything else. And I said, oh, it's really hard for me, because when I get into something, I get really into it. And so what I've had to do, particularly since I took a year off, I'm on a gap year right now, so it means I'm gonna have to get a job soon. But I took a year off, but there are still things I need to do. Like, since I'm not currently employed, I've been doing things like cooking, cleaning.
I love the quotes.
Yes. Cleaning, running errands, grocery shopping, taking the dogs to the vet, answering emails. Now it's applying for jobs. I need to go back to work, but it'll be good for me. But the way that I get it so that I don't just sew all day and do nothing else, or read all day and do nothing else, is that I have turned it into a carrot for me. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to work for an hour on either cleaning the house or answering emails or, you know, whatever it is I need to do. And then when my alarm goes off, I am now going to reset it and I'm going to sew for an hour, or I'm going to read for an hour. And then when the alarm goes off, I'll go back to doing the other thing. And so it ends up being a carrot and a reward. And I do have some of that balance. And the other thing that people were asking is, do you carve out like big blocks of time? And I think when you're a very busy person with a very demanding job, you need to just try to fit it in where you can, and then you need to make time for it when you can't.
Yeah.
If you can't fit it in, you need to carve it. You need to carve it in somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I was at my busiest, when I was stationed on the Hill, working like 80-hour weeks. We just adopted our daughter. And I wasn't sewing. I wasn't doing anything. The one thing I was doing, and I was writing, and I had a third book I had to get out in my trilogy, and I was also going to conventions to promote the books and to speak on panels and things like that, in addition to everything. So the one thing I did as a hobby for me was running. And that was my sacred time, like my 15 to 30 minutes, my 20 to 30 minutes or an hour, that was mine. And no one was allowed to call me. No one was allowed to talk to me. It was just, in fact, one time I did have a member of Congress call, and my Marines shortly found out to never give my phone number out to anyone ever again, because I was in the middle of a run and they called me. It's like, what? But that was how I kept my sanity during that time. That was when I refilled my well. So this rambling conversation was just to talk about money isn't the end all be all, and having a hobby, that's the cats. Having a hobby has value in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't need to monetize it. You don't need to turn it into your side hustle. Keep your hobby your hobby.
Amen.
Bye.